Joining Carl on this week's show is Jeremy Julian, Chief Revenue Officer of Custom Business Solutions, as they talk about the question of build versus buy, the shift of ChowBus's business model, and why more and more operators are asking challenging questions around AI. That's all ahead on this week's Digital Restaurant.
Hey, we're back. It's the Digital Restaurant, and as ever, I have a brand new host. Not any usual host, though. I feel a little intimidated. We've got Mr. Jeremy Julian in the house, and if you don't know Jeremy, he's like the Big Mac of restaurant podcasts out there. So I don't know what you're going to put me as, Jeremy, but I feel like I'm maybe the chicken nugget out there, and you're the Big Mac. So name brand of choice, whatever you will, but certainly when it comes to restaurant technology podcasts, and you're one of the restaurant technology guys, it's been great to listen to your content. And you've had me on one or two times, I think, before, but we've never had you on my one. So welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm grateful to hang out. Any chance I get better every time I spend time with you, Carl. So grateful for that.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind. We'll talk more about your business and what you're doing at the end of the show. But as ever, we've always got plenty to talk about in this space. When do we ever not have plenty to talk about, Jeremy? We've already spent 45 minutes today chatting about our lives, and we thought, you know what, it's better time to record. So here we go. And one of the things that I was really upset about was I wasn't able to get to FSTEC. I was at Skift at another conference, but you thankfully were there, and I'm sure you were listening with those attentive ears of yours. What were some of the core insights that you took away from the show?
And so probably the two biggest things that we continue to hear is it is FSTEC, food service technology, but I say it oftentimes on my podcast, is technology for technology's sake is worthless. Technology that's ultimately making the guest experience better, the staff experience better, and the restaurant more money are the things that people need to be focusing on. Ensuring that the staff is in a better spot because of whatever technology you're putting in place, as well as your guest experience is better, are non-negotiables anymore. And multiple people from stage talked about, there's all of these really cool things that are going on. I know we'll talk about AI at some point, but without it, you've got to make sure that you meet those core criteria, because throwing stuff at the wall that's not doing that, ultimately nobody has time for it any longer.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about the ways in which folks were talking about it, there was the MIT report a few weeks back that was talking about ROI and being able to have that picture of ROI before you even put any money towards it. Did that come up much at all?
It did, and I think a lot of people talked about testing things in small little bits to identify ROI. Obviously, I'd love to ensure that you have an ROI before you engage in a project. So yes, there was a lot of people talking about that. The one thing that I would say was also an undercurrent from a lot of the conversations is the ability to test. Before, it feels like you would have to make some really, really large investments to test things. Now it feels like a lot more brands are more willing to test small little, whether it's voice AI or it's digital menu boards or it's lots of different things in small batches, because the platforms continue to get more and more open. One other thing I forgot to mention, Carl, is hospitality was a huge theme, is ensuring that your technology is not taking away from the hospitality of what it is that you're doing as a brand. And so ensuring people come to dine out because they want the hospitality. They don't necessarily want just to be faced with technology and technology alone. And so Kevin Bentley was great about that. He jumped on stage and just said, you know what, we always have to be, no, I'm sorry, it was Kevin. Kevin had talked a little bit about that. And then there was somebody else that had talked about it. Zarek from Five Guys had talked about the fact that you've got to make sure that you meet your guests where they are, because culturally at a minimum in the United States, ensuring that you can be hospitable when you need to be, when the guests are looking for it, is a big piece.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part. And certainly when I talk about AI in this environment, Jeremy, I often say to folks, it doesn't matter what brand, what type of cuisine, the style of restaurant. Ultimately, if you look at the restaurants out there, the best performing ones, typically they're the ones that have a GM that spends most time with their team or most time with their guests, in whichever way. Mm-hmm. And so then if you reverse that around and you ask yourself, well, what's keeping them from doing that? And oftentimes it might be office activity, or it might be hiring, or it might be scheduling, or some form of ordering. Well, then you ask yourself, well, how can technology help me in those environments? If those things can help me get out of the office and therefore spend more time with my team or with my guests, and that has a positive correlation to the performance of my restaurant, then why wouldn't I want to embrace that? And I think that kind of really builds the idea of hospitality and the people focus into it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. There is that hurdle that we as operators have to get over, which is trusting the tools that you've been given to do that, which was another big topic is a lot of people were in the tech space putting these tools out in front of their operators. And sometimes they talk about AI scheduling, but if they don't trust it, then none of it matters. So you've got to build in slowly so that they become part of the solution as operators so that they can trust that they don't have to spend all of that office time. Now they're back with the guests and now they're back with their staff members. So, Carl, there's been a lot of talk about voice AI and really just you live in the digital world. Voice AI, it feels like there's a new voice AI company every day that comes out. I'd love your thoughts on the reports that are coming out, InTouch Insights, QSR report on these things. Tell me more about where you see these things going.
What I want to do is bring up this report that InTouch Insights released in the last few weeks, and we'll go through it. There's 33 pages of this, Jeremy, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But I think last year, 2024, the two biggest investments across our industry was voice AI at the drive-thru and kiosks. For me, that just seemed to be the thing that was getting the most attention. And so therefore, to be able to now look into the way in which some of those deployments have been received by customers, I think is actually a good point in time just to take a pause and actually take a look at it. So QSR and InTouch Insight pulled together this report here. They focused in on a number of well-known brands here: Wendy's, Taco Bell, Chipotle, McDonald's, Panera Bread. And they did a bunch of surveys where they spoke to guests, but they also built in some of the studies that were done back in 2024, which was 1,600 or so visits across the US in June and July. So a variety of different studies from the drive-through side, but then also this on-premise piece where people were given their experiences from a guest perspective as to what things look like from an in-store ordering angle. So let's start by talking about voice AI and the drive-through. I'll include the link to this full report in the show notes. But let's go to slide 7. What really stood out for me here was this thing around friendliness, in the sense that the voice AI drive-through was deemed 4% better from a friendliness perspective than the drive-through benchmark, which wasn't AI, and the study that was done last year. So isn't that interesting? Right away, people are starting to say, well, actually, voice AI feels a little bit more friendly. Interesting. But here's the rub. If you go down a couple of rows lower on this, order accuracy was actually deemed to be lower as a result of this. And a large chunk of those, almost 2/3 or so, were due to the AI's inability to address a certain level of customization. So in many ways, I think it reflects still the nascency of a lot of these AI models that have been able to cope with the variability that exists and the fact that more and more customers are wanting to customize their order. So order accuracy is still good at 83%, but we know relative to most drive-through, 83% is not to cut it. And so that one really stood out. When you look a little bit deeper into this, on slide 8 here, you'll see Wendy's, Taco Bell, and Bojangles were looked at in terms of the amount of times that an employee had to intervene. And with Wendy's and Taco Bell, it's almost 1 in 3. So in many ways, that's good in one sense, in the sense that the model knows when to turn over to a human to be able to intervene. But on the same way, you also want these models to get better so that you're not having to necessarily interrupt the human 1 in 3 occasions. So that I thought was interesting. And then when we go a little deeper into Wendy's here, you'll see that with Wendy's, they did not have to repeat the order 65% of the time relative to the benchmark of 78%. But the interaction with the speaker was actually better than the benchmark. And then way higher was the shopper was offered a suggestive upsell in some way. And that was all able to be done in 23 seconds faster than the benchmark. So there's a bunch of things in there which I think all point towards the value proposition of why voice AI and the drive-through is helpful, but also some opportunities, I think, certainly when it comes to the ability for the shopper not having to repeat the order and why that perhaps had to happen, even though the speaker was clear and understandable. When you look at Taco Bell, there wasn't as high a level of suggestive upselling, but the speaker clarity was a lot better. So these are the new benchmarks in the way that we've seen all these drive-through studies being done in the past. These are some of the new ways in which I think a lot of these big brands are trying to assess themselves. Before I move on, any reflections on any of that?
So the one thing that I think our listeners need to consider as it relates to AI is what model are you training them on? Because we had a customer that they trained the model on their online ordering. And unfortunately, the people would call into the restaurant or go through the drive-through to get something that they could not get digitally. And if you're training it with the exact same model, I would suspect that the challenges with not being able to get the order accuracy are because a human was able to say, oh, you want this with this. That's not really on our menu, but I figured it out. As a brand, you need to identify, do you even want to offer that product? Because unfortunately, I remember years ago, California Pizza Kitchen, I was working with them. You're not allowed to get two different sauces on a pizza. They didn't think that the product would be any good, but you might be able to talk a server into it. And again, back to the drive-through, you might be able to talk them into it when you've got a human there, but the computer is specifically trained to not allow you to put barbecue sauce on one side and red sauce on the other side of the pizza. And so as you're evaluating these things, you need to decide how much flexibility you want to provide and then train it on that data.
Let's move on and talk about the mobile order for pickup in either the drive-through or in the store. This one here was interesting from the standpoint that mobile ordering reduced time spent in the drive-through by 1 minute and 54 seconds compared to the benchmark. So the fact that someone is ordering perhaps on their cell phone through the app is helping the overall speed and optimization of it. I suspect there's a piece of that associated to the fire time of the order, the proximity of the vehicle, and being able to make sure that the order is absolutely ready so that when the person's coming through, they've actually been able to receive their order in good time. There might also be an element, as we're starting to see, of increased levels of drive-through lanes where you're starting to have mobile pickup order drive-through lanes. That might be playing into these numbers. I think they've become more dominant over the course of the last year. The other side of it, which I thought was interesting, is only 57% of mobile pickup shoppers saw an upsell offer compared to 64% in the drive-through and 75% on-premise, which again, more points towards a gap in the app UX and the ability for you to be able to have an upsell done at the point of ordering, even when you're not necessarily at the restaurant itself. The other one that I thought was interesting, let's go to slide 18 here, this is in reference to Dutch Brothers, was the amount of times where you actually saw a glitch in the ordering process. So you've got a glitch in the ordering process being 10%, but then also the amount of time the employees reconfirming the order at the speaker window being 75%. And when you look through a lot of these here, you'll see, for example, the difference at Chipotle, where that's only happening 40% of the time. And I think there's something about how do you address the order accuracy piece in the drive-through and also the mobile pickup order experience so that you're really making sure that the guest is clear and has confirmed exactly what they're expecting. I suspect when it comes to someone like a Wingstop, for example, it's a little difficult because their customization comes in the sauces and the rubs. You don't really get to see whether you've got what you wanted until you're really tucking into it. Let's move on to kiosks, because again, as I say, I think this was a big area that got a lot of focus. Friendliness. Were you greeted or acknowledged upon entering a location? Now, I don't know about you, Jeremy. I like the kiosk. I like going up to a kiosk. I like the ability to just spend time to survey the menu a little bit. But I do notice now in a lot of restaurants, almost the vacuum of presence. You don't see anyone. They're almost in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of actually still being welcomed in is really important. In many ways, the only point of connection is actually when your order's being brought to you. And so it's interesting here when you look across brands that are known, certainly in Shake Shack sense, for their friendliness, that actually is still pretty low from that angle. And I think there's that hospitality angle that you mentioned at the FSTEC conference that is coming through here. You've got to remember how this is still an important part. Even though someone perhaps wants to order through a technological solution, doesn't necessarily mean they don't want hospitality in a very simple and cheap way to do.
There's a new position that a lot of people were talking about at the conference called this greeter hospitality person. That's a new position that a lot of these digital first brands are considering, where they're there greeting them when they walk in, almost like a host at a table service restaurant. And so a lot of people are now talking about adding that to that position so that they can drive the experience. And then if you don't want to do technological, then they can either walk you through it. No different than I think we have in the grocery business. There's self-checkout almost everywhere, but there's always somebody there if you really need somebody to help walk you through it. And so there was quite a few brands that were talking about creating this hospitality host type position out front. And I would agree with you. I experienced Shake Shack a couple of months ago in a digital only, and it was not the most warm and friendly. And I know that brand typically is.
Yeah. Interesting. And then, of course, when you look at Shake Shack in particular, at least the customers that were surveyed for this study, look at this, 100% across the board on the ordering experience, the pickup experience, and the speed of service, and 0% glitches in the ordering process. So congrats to the team there for what they've been up to, because clearly they've been able to find some real benefit, I think, there in being able to make sure that folks are enjoying the experience and are getting what they want in good time. All right, let's move on to our third question, Jeremy. My goodness, isn't this the perennial question that gets asked all the time? Build versus buy. How do you tackle this one, and how is it changing?
I think across the board, it's one of those things that it depends on what it is that you're building and what it is that you're buying. The biggest problem I see within our space is, especially executives, they think it's just easy. How hard can it be? And the truth is many of us spend decades trying to figure out how hard can it be. And so if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And so I think creating clarity on what your end goal is probably the biggest thing in a build versus buy scenario that you need to figure out. What is it that you're trying to create clarity on? Something as large as a KDS system or a POS system or a loyalty platform? Those are really, really big pieces. If you're trying to get an AI, Taco Bell, and they're just up the road from you, they just had a big release where they did all of their own digital ordering. They're probably big enough that it makes sense. But does a brand that's got $200 million in revenue need to be in the technology business? Likely not. And so across the board, I think ensuring that you understand where you're going and what the path is that you're looking to get to is huge. One thing that, talking back about FSTEC from last week, that was really, really key though is with the advent of AI, the ability to dabble and try things quickly and see if they're going to succeed or fail as a prototype is something that I would tell people they should be able to consider. Whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, you name it, you can now start to play with these things where you can build a prototype, see if it resonates, see if you can even show to the executive team that's spying off on this, does it make sense? So I'd love your thoughts on that, because it is a huge piece. And there are people that spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to create solutions to solve these problems. And oftentimes restaurants don't have that budget, nor even the knowledge and understanding of how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's the cost of the hidden overheads, right? A lot of folks look at it as the dev time. Oh, I just need to get 10 engineers and they'll
Yeah.
build it for me, and we're way to the races. It's the maintenance, it's the security, it's the compliance, it's the downtime, scalability, staffing, all of those angles that usually exceed, I think, what the initial estimates suggest. And then it's also about what's the core business.
Mhm.
In my world right now of AI and everything we're doing around custom development in that space, the model developers are moving at a pace and changing rapidly. It's tough for me to keep up, and that's my business, right? So I think there's just this angle of understand where the value is of being able to have something that's going to make most sense for you and your business, and also look into the value of custom is absolutely something I completely get behind.
Yep.
But there's also this piece around making sure it's going to deliver the right ROI, that it's going to deliver the right level of differentiation, and gives you a step change advantage over the rest.
Unequivocally, and again, we talked about trade shows before. When Domino's decided to build their own for kind of their Domino's pizza tracker, that's an area that they truly went and differentiated themselves from all of the other delivery pizza places and delivered a better experience that everybody was trying to chase for years to catch up to them. Whereas, do I think that some of the others that have built their own differentiated it at all? No, it actually is harmful. The other thing I want to make sure that everybody understands is there is maintenance. There's ongoing maintenance every day in any application you build. You don't just build it once and set it on the shelf. There's constant security updates, there's constant code updates, there's constant feature enhancements, there's constant compliance enhancements, and things that need to happen that you cannot get around. And I tell people all the time, focus on what you do well and partner at a deep level with the people that do the thing that you're trying to get done well. And I do believe that true partnerships exist in our industry in ways that both teams can succeed and grow in today's day and age. And I really don't think that there's a lot of advantage to building anything yourself from a core application perspective. Again, you want to go create some small little email engine to be able to go send to your top loyal customers, probably something okay to go build and not go take something off the shelf. But core applications that are going to interface with the guests and interface with your staff, whether that's scheduling, whether that's loyalty, whether that's point of sale, whether that's KDS, I really don't think that there is any advantage to building it yourself. So talk to me a little bit about ChowBus. I know ChowBus has been around. They've kind of pivoted in the space. So I'd love to get your thoughts on where they're at now and where you think they're going. And quite honestly, even if you have some opinions, why do you think they've gone there?
Yeah. This one didn't get a ton of attention. Probably should have, right? Everyone, if you haven't heard, ChowBus is best known for being the Asian-focused delivery platform that really tried to carve out a niche in a space dominated by the likes of DoorDash and Uber Eats. And it turns out that they've been quietly reinventing themselves. And the article on this was on Restaurant Technology News. And ChowBus is now positioning itself as a full-stack restaurant technology provider. So not just delivery anymore, but POS, loyalty, first-party ordering, broader operational tools for independent restaurants. And the claim is that this pivot is gaining traction, that operators are responding to positively to be able to have this more unified tech experience. But let's pause, because on the surface, this feels like yet another delivery company trying to make the economics work by becoming a tech platform. But what's really happening here? Because this isn't entirely new. ChowBus has always played the kind of cultural relevance card relatively well, focusing on mom and pop restaurants in Asian American communities who often don't always have access to the big tech tools. And they understood early on that curation and the language support mattered to help those folks that wanted to offer their food in a way that perhaps wasn't being accommodated for by the other players. But it's one thing to aggregate restaurants and offer a niche delivery network. It's another to become a reliable operating system. And if you squint a little, this pivot looks familiar, right? You've seen Olo go deeper into the restaurant tech stack. You've seen DoorDash build white label products. And you've seen companies like Lunchbox try to position themselves as a one-stop shop. So the big difference is most of those players started in tech, whereas ChowBus is working in reverse from logistics to infrastructure. And that's not necessarily an easy shift. But I'm curious, what do you make of this kind of pivot? Do you think operators are actually looking for all of these all-in-one platforms from delivery brands, or does it feel a stretch when those same brands that you've been used to be seen as the ones that are taking 20% off the top?
I think in general, and I'm trying to keep an eye on it, obviously watch the show to kind of see the Uber Eats and the DoorDashes and all of these people going down this path. I think across the board, the desire to get there looks good on a whiteboard. But at the end of the day, the operators are way more selfish that they want what they need, and they're going to buck the trend of doing that. Outside of the fact that they're already not very happy with them because they've been taking 20% of their revenues on these things for so long.
I'd be curious to how many restaurants are using their full tech stack. What features are differentiated enough to make someone switch, and are they really competing against Toast now?
Well, and I think if they had 90% of their sales through that platform, I could see it being something that they just consolidate because they don't really have the business needs. It's a off-prem only, or it's a 90% off-prem type delivery concept. I could see that being something that they consider, but you know what? Most restaurants are not that way. They still have some decent percentage of people that are, even if they're ordering digitally, 100% of their orders. I'd love actually your thoughts though, because they talked a little bit about it at FSTEC about the coffee company out of China that is digital only at the show. So Luckin Coffee is a Chinese-based coffee company. They've got 10,000 or so in China at this point, and they've got a few outlets in New York, but they will not take an order other than from the app. That is the only way you can order coffee. So I think in that scenario, and so they've got their entire digital tech stack, but they talked about it at the show, and I watched a couple of YouTube videos on it just to kind of figure out, is it really there? Outside of the fact that some people say the coffee's not good, whatever, but they're trying to go 100% digital. So now they know 100% attribution of who's ordering as well, because you have to do it from your own app. There's no kiosk and there's no barista that you can order from. 100% of it you have to do from your app. And so I think back to your comment about ChowBus, if you're a concept like that where it's 100% digital and you don't really care, you might be able to get away with it.
Yeah. Well, any organization that's built from a blank sheet should absolutely embrace the idea of building a vertical tech stack. It makes complete sense. Why deal with the inertia of all the systems and the API challenges from it? So it's pretty much the wonder model, right? What those guys are doing over there as well. So certainly a constant theme through today's discussion. This was less of a news article, but I saw that you picked up on a couple of items within it about what most brands aren't really thinking about when it comes to digital menus. What were your thoughts on this subject?
So the couple of things that I think people realize after they get to digital menu boards and digital distribution of their items is the flexibility that allows them within their brand. And that flexibility sometimes is inter-day being able to change. The ability to change your offering digitally in a way that, again, all e-commerce platforms have been doing that forever, but restaurants don't. And when you've got static menu boards, whether it's at the drive-thru or it's in store, you have to, if you want to go change a menu, it is a 3-month process because you got to get new menus printed, whether it's physical menus or it's the menu boards that are at the counter in the drive-thru. You've got to go make those changes. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would share with you, Carl, is that you also can digitally have that menu board change throughout the experience if you want to, using some of that voice AI, that it's real time making those suggestive orders, but now changing the digital menu board to show you would you like to add bacon to that burger? Now it can show you a picture of the burger with bacon sizzling in front of you, making a craveability factor, whether that's on a kiosk or at a counter or in a drive-thru, in a much more significant way than we've ever been able to before, just because it's tying voice AI, the integration to the point of sale, and the ability to be where the guests are. I just think too few people look at that. One last point about digital menu boards that I would throw at you is the ability to 86 something real time in the digital menu when you go up to the menu board is also really, really significant.
Let's just pick up on that for a moment, because Bojangles, I think, are the company that are actually using voice AI and allowing their team to interact and be able to 86 an item, and then it basically taking that item from the menu real time. I think this is the thing that doesn't get talked about enough, quite honestly. Everyone talks about the coolness of actually being able to interact with the voice AI agent, but to augment the team to be able to do something quickly is a game changer.
Absolutely. And being able to communicate that to the guest real time is huge, because now back to, it's got to make the guest experience better. It's got to make the staff experience better. Them having to go around and tell everybody that we're out of a certain item is a huge time suck that once you get to digital, it doesn't need to happen. And I think way too few people. And then the flip side of that is if you want to throw out a special just for a couple of days at a store, digitally, you have the ability to do that. And in a physical menu board, you don't.
Well, you've been really kind with your time, Jeremy. Before we finish, please just give us an overview, a bit about yourself, the company, and of course, the podcast. How can people reach out and find out more?
Appreciate the opportunity to share. So obviously, Jeremy Julian, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for CBS NorthStar. We sell all things restaurant technology, including kitchen automation, point of sale. I have a new product called Kitchen AI that's all about digital guest engagement for order accuracy and order timing. I also am the host, as you said, of the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. We just released episode 301 or 302 this week. And so lots and lots and lots of back episodes to go through. And so love to engage. It's not about selling anything at the end of the day. I have been very, very fortunate to have had a lot of success in this industry, and I'm grateful to continue to meet people, amazing people like you that are making a difference in the industry. And so love to connect. Really, really, really active on LinkedIn. I post and comment and all of that. So you can find me, Jeremy Julian. Go search LinkedIn, go search Restaurant Technology Guys to find me. If you've got any cool stuff you want to talk about and get on the podcast, I'd love to engage there as well.
Well, it's always a pleasure to spend time and chat with you. There's not many people that know more about this space than you, sir. So it's always good to get your views. We could have probably come up with another 10 questions, but who knows? Maybe we'll get you back on next year. But for now, thank you for listening, everyone. I really appreciate you as always. If you've got any questions for Jeremy or myself, drop them in the comments below. And if you've yet to subscribe, of course, please do so. But until next time, thanks for listening. The Digital Restaurant Podcast is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Watch us Rate us and subscribe to The Digital Restaurant on YouTube and follow along on all our social media digital restaurant channels. Thanks for listening.